This is the Analysing Anfield podcast on the Blood Red channel, bringing you the best tactical and statistical analysis of Liverpool FC.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your tactics and analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. I am joined by the usual co-host, David Hughes. How are you getting on, mate?
I'm very good, thanks, Josh. How are you?
I'm good, I'm alright. Getting slightly worried by the lack of transfer business, which is one of the topics we're going to actually tackle this week. Firstly, before we start the podcast again, I'd just like to say thanks to the people that went after last week's episode and signed up for the Analysing Anfield newsletter and the Analytic 5 newsletter. The first week we sent them out last week. It was on, my one certainly was on why you probably prefer to watch Mane over Salah. Some of the reasons behind that, bit of a guesswork on my part, but I think there's something in that. Dave covers a variety of topics virtually every day, so certainly worth signing up for. But this week's newsletter will be sent out tomorrow for me, Analysing Anfield, Wednesday about midday, and we're recording today on the Tuesday. So it's worth noting, if you sign up after a newsletter is sent out, you can't go back and read it. It's gone. You have to have signed up and received the newsletter in your emails to view it. So again, similar to last week, if you haven't signed up yet, go and do it. You'll get Analysing Anfield content direct to your emails. Just search my Twitter at Distance Covered, and it's at the top of my profile where you can sign up and all that sort of stuff. And you want to add on that, Dave? Or?
Oh yeah, just make sure you do sign up. It's really good. I enjoyed that because obviously it was you wrote that piece, so it was new to my eyes and it was good, very interesting. From an Analytics 5 point of view, I'll keep it brief, but we seem to be getting some really good feedback on it. I'm glad people are enjoying it. Make sure you go over to my Twitter to sign up. It's obviously free, ad free as well. This week we're previewing the Champions League second legs. Obviously there's some really good games. Frustratingly, Liverpool aren't in it this year, but I suppose it can be enjoyed as a neutral. So if you can, try and get over as soon as possible, because we've only got a couple more games now to look at, and then maybe in a couple of weeks we'll have a look back at some of what I consider our best newsletters so far, and we'll send them out to the people who may have missed them first time round. But yeah, make sure you get signed up to both, and hopefully you're enjoying it like others seem to be at the moment.
Yeah, good stuff. So what we're going to talk about this episode is, I think last week we mentioned about what each club needs, sort of thing, to challenge for the league next season. I think we said we were maybe going to revisit that at the end of the window. I think what we're going to do is, as each link comes out and it looks concrete and it looks like it's about to happen, each week we're probably going to have a few words on whether it's a good buy, whether we should be concerned, or that sort of stuff. Just general thoughts on what our rivals are doing and what Liverpool are doing if we eventually do anything. And then once we've had a little chat about what our rivals are doing, we're then going to look at potential relegated players that Liverpool can target. We know that's an inefficiency in the market that Liverpool have quite clearly identified, considering Wijnaldum, Andy Robertson, Shaqiri, all signed for less than the actual worth from relegated clubs. Considering the current financial climate, obviously it makes a lot of sense for Liverpool to target players like that if they want to save a bit of money but add to the squad. So I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool end up doing it. But we're just going to have a little look at that, and then maybe if we've got time, just a bit more on how Liverpool can really navigate this window, because it is, keep hearing the same way, but it's unprecedented, really, isn't it? I mean, that seems to be the theme. So yeah, we'll see where we go with it anyway. But first, I think it's confirmed. I think it's officially confirmed. But Nathan Ake is officially signed, I think, for Manchester City. We covered last week, what we think they need. We did mention centre backs and stuff like that, but I think we both have slight reservations regarding Ake.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. If we start with the pros. He's a good young player. I think he's really good on the floor. He's got one of the. I think he's either inside or near the top 10 in terms of defensive duels won this season. He's really good in possession as well, which is important within the City side. So there is a lot to like about him, especially from a Man City point of view. But there's a glaring weakness, and I mentioned it on Twitter. You followed up with something on the same tweet. He's not good enough in the air, in my opinion. I know he's small by nature, isn't he? He's only is it 5'8"?
I think he's bigger than 5'8". I think he's about 5'11", isn't he?
Oh, okay. Well, I was going. Yeah. Then again, actually, I suppose 5'8" would make you very small.
I'll search it now, but I think even 5'11", it's for a dominant centre back. Usually, you're wanting 6 foot and over, really.
It is 5'11". No, I have 5'8" in my head. I've been looking at a few plays this morning, so maybe that's why it was there. But yeah, I think for those who didn't see it, I pointed out that Ake ranks inside the bottom 10 for central defenders in terms of aerial duels won last season. Ironically, Garcia is in there as well, so City have 2 of those players. I think you then kind of doubled down on that a little bit, didn't you, Josh, with something that really kind of hammers home the issues he has from that aspect of the game.
Yeah, well, I just compared him to the whole of Europe. So there's 234 centre-backs in Europe's top 5 leagues who have played at least 1,500 minutes this season. That's 234. Nathan Ake ranks 221st for aerial duel success rate. Again, just pushes home the point that he's not really that good in the air. I will say there's a fair few positives attached to it. He is cool and composed. He is left-footed, which Laporte's the only left-footed centre-back they've got. He is Premier League proven. 25 years old, so he should be moving into his peak, really. Doesn't get injured very often. But I think the aerial weakness that he has, I do think it would be a problem for City in a few matches specifically. I think a lot of teams, their approach to getting out of City's press is to hit it long. And say, for example, Burnley comes to mind. Burnley always comes to mind with this sort of stuff. If you sign press, Charlie Taylor, Phil Barnsley, he's going to hit it 60 yards up the field. And if Nathan Ake's contesting a duel with Chris Wood, it's probably not even 50-50. It's probably 60-40. Yeah. And if Chris Wood wins that knock-on, or even if something like that, if he wins the knock-on, it could be a problem for City in terms of sustaining attacks and stuff like that. And obviously, if you're playing Man City, another aspect is you don't get many opportunities at all to score. One of the few opportunities you might look at when you're facing City is, okay, if we get a set piece, we can do this. Having a player, having a centre back who's 5'11", and he's amongst like the bottom 10% or whatever of centre backs in Europe for aerial success, that's not going to make you better from set pieces. It's going to make you worse, really. So I think he's an okay sign, specifically if he's just a Laporte deputy. But if he's being signed as the player we said they needed last week, that kind of dominant presence who's capable when it comes to all aspects of the game, I think he falls short in that regard.
Yeah, I think I had a lot of replies to that tweet where people were kind of saying, one in particular, I'm not calling the person out, but it's a really good example. Someone said, "Gone are the days of the best defenders being head-it and lump-it merchants." And I think you're missing the point here. I feel like at sides like City and Liverpool, it's as important as ever that they can dominate in the air, for something that you mentioned, a few minutes ago, where on the whole they control possession of the ball, they can control territory as well. So these central defenders are normally playing on the halfway line. Liverpool fans listening now only have to think about where Van Dijk and Gomez spend most of the match. And the out ball for those opponents is that long ball. And the only way you can maintain the pressure is, winning that initial header and then trying to pick up then the second ball as well. If you're losing that duel every single time, then you're in trouble and you're always giving them the out ball. It becomes a tactic for them. And I think it's what Liverpool do what they do now so well because they've got Van Dijk. Now, even Gomez, who's not to the standard of Van Dijk, but he's so much better than what Ake is in the air. And it is so important.
Yeah, there's been a few games this season where specifically Van Dijk, but even the aerial prowess of Matip has come into it, and Gomez a little bit further down as well. Just certain games where we've been battered aerially, but we've coped fine. Burnley away, Sheffield United away as well. Van Dijk was an absolute monster at Bramall Lane, and I think if we had played with, say for example, City's centre backs in that match, I think we'd have probably lost or something like that, or maybe drew or whatever. But if you just got to think back to it, how Liverpool coped before Van Dijk was signed. Van Dijk's obviously improved Liverpool defence in a number of areas, but the aerial dominance that Liverpool now have is clear to see, and I do think it's important for these teams that want to dominate to have a player like that. It's not absolutely evident, and I think it's more important for Liverpool centre back than a City centre back. But it's a trait you want, and it's a trait that would put me off if I was looking on. But having said that, he does tick a few other boxes, and as I said, if he's a deputy, if he's a third, fourth choice, it's not the worst deal in the world. But it's too much money though. 41 million for him is crazy.
Do you think it's because you think it's because he's a lefty as well, Josh? I noticed James York tweeted out, didn't he, that he named about maybe 5 or 6 left-footed central defenders in the Premier League who've played over 900 minutes. And he pointed out it's quite a small pool of players, and I do wonder whether that does influence decisions sometimes. Yeah,
that's probably been weighted in the decision making as to whether he's a good signing a lot more than we're probably crediting, to be honest. But another player who hasn't officially signed yet, but it looks like he's going to, Jadon Sancho.
How does this make you feel? How does this make you feel initially before we get into analysis? Put your fan head on, because I was quite telling.
Put my fan head on.
Yeah. Well, because we're getting to the analysis. You see, one of Liverpool's rivals buying a player, Sancho. Does it bother you? Yeah.
I'm not worried. I'm just I'm more gutted.
Yeah. I get it.
There's a bit of a difference. Like, he's just a fantastic sign. It's just a great buy. Like, it's just, you don't even have to overthink this one, regardless of how much he costs. It's just a great buy. Really, really good player. English, homegrown. Yeah, he's expensive, but doesn't matter. If you're Manchester United, it's not really a big deal. The way Liverpool have to look at, certain little edges in the market, undervalued players and all that sort of clever stuff. You don't really have to as much if you're Man United. You just go out. You just have to not buy bad players. You just have to sign hit after hit after hit. And if you've got loads of money, that's a lot easier. I think Sancho's going to be a hit. Pretty obvious. 20 years old and playing both flanks really well as well. And in his past 2 seasons in the Bundesliga, he's hit double figures goals and double figures assists in both seasons. So it's just a really good buy. There's not much more to say to it. Yes, I would have loved him at Liverpool. I never ever thought we were going to buy him anyway, just because of how expensive he's going to cost. How expensive he's going to be. United are paying probably a grand total of 120 million for this player. He'd have to be incredibly, transformational for Liverpool to be willing to pay that. And looking at Liverpool's current team, and this is probably why I'm not that worried. I still think Mane and Salah are better at the minute, at least. I think Sancho can be whatever he wants. But one of the reasons maybe I'm not too concerned just yet is that I still think if Liverpool was to keep a 4-3-3, I still don't think he starts actually. But it's still just a brilliant buy.
Yeah, really good roundup that actually. I wasn't sure because we'd spoken about previously whether the fee was just too much. This is before we knew the specifics, so we were guessing. Even at one point we were like, he's going to be 140, 150, and we were like, it's just too much. So I was thinking, I wonder if this is going to be a controversial take, but from what you've just said, it isn't. But I think for what the figure at the moment is 108, I believe 108 million, and then there might be add-ons further down the line. But I think for that price, he's worth every penny. I really do. I think it was.
I think the 108 is English, isn't it? But
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think Dortmund wants 120 million euros and all that. So I suppose it depends whatever you're going by. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my conversion rate. That 120 to 108. I don't think that'd be far off, to be fair. But anyway, yeah, he's 17 goals was it? This season in the league, 17 assists as well. All the underlying numbers back up everything he does. He's only 20, and to have played the number of games he has at the highest level already, to me, points to a player who won't really need any sort of transition period because he's played at the highest level for so long that you could just imagine him coming in and be a huge hit. I just think he's a phenomenal player, and I can understand why some Liverpool fans might be frustrated that they haven't made a move because I think Liverpool are appealing enough to get him. And I know you talk about the way United work financially compared to Liverpool, it's a bit different. But there's probably a frustration that Liverpool couldn't just go out and spend on this guy. I know we said this about Timo Werner, but I put Sancho on that same bracket, and he'll definitely improve United.
Yeah, I mean we did mention a while back that they're very quietly on the right track, and I think what they've done that's most notable is they've stopped making mistakes in the market. That's the big thing. They've stopped buying players who have maybe a 50% chance of coming off or whatever. They're only buying players who they're certain are going to come off, and that's involved 50 million for Wan-Bissaka, 80 odd million for Harry Maguire, 108 for Sancho. Ridiculous fees. But the crucial thing is that they're not making mistakes. They're getting hits. They're signing hits every time. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it. I think he'll have as much of a free run of things in England compared to Germany. The style of play is different. England's a lot better tactically for me, in terms of teams being difficult to play against. At least I think Germany's obviously very tactically developed, but most teams in Germany play the same. Matches tend to be quite open. Sancho tends to take his shots when he's in plenty of space and stuff like that. But I think in England, going up against Burnley, Crystal Palace, Sheffield United, it will be different for him. But because he's English, and because of how good he is, I can't envisage him having many issues. And even if he does, he's 20 years old, so they've got plenty of time to bet him in. So finally, we'll just a quick note on Ferran Torres, who I've actually heard a word that is getting announced tomorrow. A little bit of inside information there. This is the Tuesday today, so we'll see whether that happens or not. But yeah, it looks like he's signed for Manchester City. Any thoughts?
I'm struggling with this one actually. I was talking about this morning. I think he looks a really good talent. We're talking about the players same age as Sancho, and he's certainly not on that level. I think he looks a really good dribbler. Just from what I can see, there doesn't seem to be a lot of end product in the final third. Maybe I'm way off. I don't know. I've only really looked at the numbers. I can't remember watching him in a full game, so I'm only working off clips and what I've seen the numbers. And I think he just looks a really exciting player, but I'm just not sure how good he is, I guess. And I also think, we were talking about adaptation for Sancho there. I think that it could be difficult in terms of adapting to this league because, if you think about City games, they're always coming up against low blocks. And Torres, to me, seems like a player who's relying a lot on his pace and speed and quick dribbling. And there isn't going to be a lot of that in England. But as I said, it's a tough one. It's not one that I'm thinking Liverpool have missed a trick.
No, same. I think he'll be okay. But I must admit, I think I'd be a bit more concerned about whether he's going to struggle if he was moving to anywhere other than Manchester City. I think because he's moving to City and he'll be working under Guardiola, he's got a bit more of a chance of being a success. I think he's a downgrade on Leroy Sané, which I think is quite a big deal considering, if you're replacing a player, ideally you don't really want to take a step down, and I think that's what they've done a little bit. Right-footed right winger, 20 years old, good first touch from what I've seen of him. But I think you are right in terms of his product. 6 goals and 7 assists in La Liga since his debut, and that's about 3,400 minutes. So it's okay. Probably increase and be much better at the Etihad, to be honest, considering City's dominance. But yeah, I don't think he's, certainly not yet, I don't think he's much of a game changer. I think he's just kind of another City attacker, basically, to add to the wealth of options they've already got.
I wonder if potentially, you mentioned Sane there, I was wondering maybe to see him as like a long-term Mahrez type replacement. Because he's considered a fairly decent dribbler and some threat in the final third, but he hasn't developed that yet. I wonder if maybe he's because Mahrez is like 29 now, so his game will probably start regressing over the next year or two. So maybe that's the option. I don't know.
Yeah, but it could be. But mind you, I was going to say that I think Mahrez is a lot better, but I haven't said that. I don't know what Mahrez was like when he was 20. I don't even know where he was playing. But Mahrez seems to have a lot of product to his game, and Mahrez is left-footed. I think Torres seems a bit more generic, a bit more like, not really a generational type. The kind of player you'd see quite often, really. I mean, I don't want to play him down too much because he's not a bad player by any means, but I suppose we're just talking in terms of title chasing. And from a Liverpool perspective, I don't think it's one's overly too concerned about.
To me, Josh, it feels like if he was joining, and this is no disrespect to them because they're a good side, but if he was joining, say, Arsenal, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, a good player by the looks of it joining a good side. But as you alluded to there, we're talking about like Liverpool and City at the moment, and I don't think he's going to particularly he wouldn't close the gap, for example, this year between City and Liverpool, would he?
No. Just for a bit of perspective, he's a few months younger than Christian Pulisic, who I think, again, he's another one you compared him to Sancho before. In terms of Pulisic, I'd rate Pulisic above him as well. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see where we go with him. But in terms of, in fact, before we move on to relegated players, have you got any quick thoughts on Willian to Arsenal? This one's caused quite a bit of a
controversy.
Talk, yeah.
I can understand why the players choosing to do it. I know they wanted to sign him down, but they're probably thinking, he's probably thinking as a player, look at the players that they've got coming in. It's going to be a fight to play in the side next year. You're not even sure what formation they're going to be using, so maybe he wants a new, fresh challenge. But I actually do really like Willian. Just some analysis work I did for the piece a couple of weeks ago. I noticed and I think he does take some set pieces, of course, but he had the highest XA even this season at Chelsea. So he's still a huge creative threat. I think his game's really sure. He looks like such a good player, despite being on the wrong side of 30. So I think from an Arsenal point of view, yeah, I think he's a good move. Do you not think so? Or?
I don't know. It's tricky. I mean, they're meant to be paying him quite a bit, and they're giving him a 3-year deal with 1-year extension, which I think is quite mad for a 31-year-old.
No, that's too long.
And it depends whether he's maybe going to block the path of a few of the talent got at the club. But what I will say in his defence, I think although he's 31, he doesn't seem to be showing any signs of physical regression. He's absolutely lightning quick still. He's one of the quickest players I think I've ever seen in terms of bursting to your top speed like that. He's just lightning. Gets away from you so quickly. Which is why I think he's a really good player in transition and things like that. In terms of getting the ball to the final third, and I'd like to see him almost as an Oxlade-Chamberlain type midfielder, that type of thing, where he's just using his physical, capacity to just carry the balls to the attackers and then kind of let them put the ball in the net. Because I think he's similar to Ox in terms of just his actual output in terms of goals and assists. It's improved this season, fair enough, but over the course of his career, it hasn't been enough really to justify an attacking slot in a top European team, maybe.
Would you like to see him at Liverpool under different financial circumstances?
No. I wouldn't have much of an interest in Liverpool bringing him in. But when he was linked to Liverpool, I must say I did want him then, even though he chose Spurs and Chelsea over us or whatever. But yeah, as an attacker, I don't think he offers enough in terms of product. But relegated players anyway for Liverpool. So we'll start with Norwich. Anyone from Norwich who, as Michael Edwards, you'd be interested in picking off for a reduced price, let's say.
I'm going to leave the open goal for you because there's a player I know you really like. That gets spoken about a lot, so I'll leave that one. I don't think I can come up with any new shouts. I can't remember if this was you who said this or somebody else when talking about Jamal Lewis. They said they were a little bit disappointed by him in this campaign, but I'd still think he'd be a good option for Liverpool as a left back.
No, I think for me, I think I might have said I was a bit disappointed with Max Aarons on the opposite side.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it would have been. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Then I'll start us off. Yeah, I think Lewis would be a good buy. He's got some Premier League experience now. Okay, in a poor side, but I'm pretty sure he's still just 20. He might be 22 now, actually. But I think he looks a good all rounder at left back. Plenty of room to improve.
Do you know which country he represents?
No, he did represent England at a certain level. I'm sure he did.
I could have sworn for some reason that he was English, but he's Northern Ireland.
What?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
I'm not having that. Hold on. Oh yeah, I had my eye wiped there. I was convinced he represented. And well, he says he was born at Luton, but I've had my eye wiped. I'm surprised at that. Didn't know that. Maybe he thought it's a better chance of playing regularly, but I don't know. He looks like he could have a high ceiling. But yeah, I'd put him in there, Josh, and then a player who I thought he was a little bit hotter earlier in the season and maybe cooled down. Obviously had injuries as well. Would be, Cantwell. Technically sound, good composure, good with both feet. The only thing with him is I haven't watched Minamino, who's also quite slight. I just wonder whether it's kind of made me rethink bringing in that type of player and how much they could actually impact the game for Liverpool. I don't know if that's really harsh. Don't know if you agree, but it just made me reconsider that thought process a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think if you was to replace Adam Lallana like for like, I think Cantwell looks like a complete reincarnation of him. Really, really similar player in terms of being slight, being really technical, close control, good in small spaces and stuff like that. But and he's English as well, English and homegrown Cantwell, so that offers a few little squashes. But yeah, I don't know. I don't, in terms of his physical stuff, his physical traits, he does look like for lack of a better word, a bit of a boy, to be honest. And Liverpool are a team full of men. But yeah, I think the player that I'm sure he was teaming me up for would be Buendia. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he's this absolute world beater, but I think he's, in terms of what we like to find, the output merchants we call him. He's an output merchant, at least in terms of creating chances for other players. He's one of the players that you'd probably overlook if you didn't have access to data. But if you've got data, you'll probably see that he's a really, he's a high risk type player. Only 1 goal in the Premier League all season, 7 assists, but only 5 players in total posted more shot assists than he did. That's despite finishing 20th in the table. And only 2 players averaged more shot assists per 90. Those were De Bruyne and Pascal Gross. I think obviously set pieces plays a part in that. But yeah, I think in terms of setting up other players, he's only 23. He, as an option from the bench, let's say, I think he'd be a really, really useful solution, considering how he's inclined to spot openings and stuff like that. If you can't break through or something like that, put Wendy on for 15 minutes. He'll just spot things. He'll just see things.
It feels like it'd probably be a bit of an upgrade on Shaqiri, for example. Someone who you could look to come on and actually influence the game. I think that was meant to be Shaqiri's role, but hasn't, for whatever reason, hasn't quite worked out as of this year.
The only thing is with him, I think he signed a new contract at the start of the season, and I think with us getting Minamino in, I'm not sure if there'd be that much logic in adding Buendia to an attacking lineup that already has Minamino, who's similar in height, similar in age, roughly, and similar in where on the pitch, the areas he wants to take up and stuff like that. So maybe there's a little bit of a conflict there now, where I can't really see it happening. But at the same time, knowing what Liverpool are like with numbers and stuff like that, and if we can get a decent fee for Shaqiri, maybe, I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't know. He's a player that I'm sure Liverpool will be aware of, because you can't not be when he's as attacking as that.
The only thing with him as well that could be a bit of an issue would be he's kind of drifted onto the radar, of a few different Premier League clubs. Liverpool probably just think, it's not a necessity signing for them at all. Do they really want to get involved in any sort of not bidding war, because I don't think they'd approach it. If it become that, they wouldn't bother. But would they want to be paying an extra, say, 5 million just to beat others to him? I don't think they'd be that bothered, really.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd just like to see him stay in the league.
Yeah.
Like I saw him linked with Leeds. Well, I'd love to see that. Buendia under Bielsa. That'd be something to see that. But yeah, what about Watford then? Unless you've got any more Norwich players.
I haven't actually.
No, same.
Yeah, it doesn't say much for them really. I'll have to go with the obvious one because I'm a huge fan, and it's Sarr. Really versatile, exciting player. I still think he's a little bit raw. But I think in a few years he's going to be a really top player. He's tall, 6'1", really, really quick. He's good on the ball. He's a good dribbler. And as I said, I'm not too sure it's all there in the final third, but he still chipped in with a few goals this year. He seems to work very hard as well. At Watford, he's really improved his defensive work this year, because they've often kind of been sitting deep and relying on him to, kind of get them out and explode. He's just a really good player. I think he's basically followed the same path as Mane, hasn't he, in terms of coming through is it the Foot Academy? I'm not
Generation
sure.
Foot, is it?
Yeah, that's it. That is it. Yeah, Generation of Foot. He's come through there. Obviously, he's a Senegal player as well. I could see him coming to Liverpool and really developing in this regime.
Yeah, I think out of all the players that suffered relegation, I think he's got the highest ceiling, comfortably. 22 years old still, but I must admit I really, really like him. I think he's got a lot on his side in terms of his profile and what he could become. I just think he needs a fair bit of training, good training by a good attacking coach, like maybe a certain Jurgen Klopp. But I think he's coped well at Watford. I think he's been used as a bit of an outlet, carrying him up the field and that sort of stuff, which he's really good at because of his running ability and stuff like that. Clearly got lots of stamina, athleticism. I think you just mentioned there he's 6'1", I think, which you probably wouldn't even consider that, would you? I think that's just another positive, really. That another thing that he's just got added to his game. That I think Mane is really good in the air, for example. It's a positive if you can have an attacker who's tall rather than short, and it's probably going to be better for you, isn't it? I think he's been used at Watford as well on the right, and considering he's right-footed, I'd be intrigued to see how he did on the left for the season. With a bit more goal focused rather than crosses and stuff like that.
A piece I wrote about him. I basically alluded to that. I was like, don't be fooled by the fact he is playing on the right. He's doing that because Watford see that as the best position for him at the moment, or to suit them. But I mean, he is versatile, isn't he? He can play on either side, and we've said before how important that is. If you think of Liverpool's wide attackers now, they can play on either side of the pitch. And I just think the ability to swap wings mid-game always causes headaches for a side defending. It just upsets the rhythm of their game plan a little bit. So to have a player who can do that is really important. He just ticks a lot of Liverpool boxes, I think, for me. Okay, I don't think he'd come in and be an instant hit, like say Mane was when he came from Southampton. But in a year or two, I think he could be there.
Yeah, I think on the clock he could be really, really good. I just have my doubts as to whether it'd happen. For example, Watford only bought him last season, and he paid 30 million for him. So although they've suffered relegation, I'd expect them to want at least the money back. They also have a link with Udinese in Serie A through the Pozzo family. So technically, they wouldn't have to keep a relegated player in the Championship. They could send them to Udinese for a year. He's also contracted for another 4 years, and Liverpool had, I'm not sure if you want to include this or not, but Liverpool had a bit of a transfer, maybe a saga, I'm not sure if you could call it, a few years ago with Peter Zielinski, Polish player who was contracted to Udinese at the time, and Liverpool were trying to buy him, and he was comings and goings and a bit of confusion and stuff like that. But after that deal not happening, maybe the bridge between Liverpool and the Pozzo family or whatever is a little bit tarnished. But it remains to be seen whether that's even a thing. That's just completely speculation, that one, as to whether that hindered a deal or not. But yeah, as a relegated player, out of all the relegated players in Europe, I think Sarr I'd be excited if we signed Sarr. I'd like us to sign him over a lot of players who've stayed in the top division. To be honest, I don't know. He's one of the best players I've seen to actually suffer relegation in the past few years. And then finally, Bournemouth. Nobody.
I was laughing to myself when I knew we were going to be considering this subject and looking into it, because I was like, I wish Analysing Anfield was 5 years ago when Liverpool weren't this size. They were kind of trying to become something better. Because it'd be a lot easier to try and pick players for them. I think it's really hard. There's one player I know you've written about him previously. They were linked last year. Maybe Lloyd Kelly. I'll let you go into that a little bit further. I'll just mention there is a couple of players that I do like at Bournemouth. Like David Brooks. I think he could be a good player. I like Phil Billing as well, which might be on my own for that. But I get Fellaini vibes about him, and people might laugh, and because people perceive Fellaini as this kind of joker, a bit of a liability. But as someone who watched him, week in, week out, he was a very good player, very effective player, and he just reminds me of him. So I think that they're two really good players who should stay in the Premier League, but not Liverpool standard. So kind of should be Premier League players, but not certainly top two sides. But don't know if you want to mention Lloyd Kelly.
Yeah, Lloyd Kelly was the name I've got down. To be honest, half their squad seems to be ex-Liverpool players. Could have got Brad Smith back or anything like that. But yeah, Lloyd Kelly, still only 21. We were linked with him last summer when he was at Bristol City still. English, homegrown, so he's ticking the boxes. Good athlete, mobile, left-footed as well, which does me head in whenever Robertson's out. We have to replace him at left back with a right-footed player. It just messes things up. Robertson's the only left-footed defender at the club. It just needs resolving if it can, and I don't think Bournemouth would be too forced. They lost Kelly, and I think they'd probably accept the money back. I think they paid about 13 million for him last summer. Maybe we could get him for even less than that, considering the lack of revenue they've got because of the coronavirus, suffering relegation. So yeah, Kelly is that'll be interesting. That one to see if we do maybe look back at that, because Liverpool have this thing where we might get linked with a player in like 2013, and 4 years later we will sign him. Like Salah, we were linked with when he was at Bal. Shaqiri, we were linked with when he was at Bayern Munich, I think. And we usually keep our focus on these players for even after they've moved. So the fact Lloyd Kelly's gone back down to the Championship, that would be an interesting little solution, let's say, to a potential void in the Liverpool squad. I know Nico Williams has come through, but and he's right foot, and he's a right back for me, not a left back, even though he gained minutes at left back. Yeah, David Brooks crossed my mind, even just as a player who's maybe going to offer a bit more than Origi. But to be honest, I can't see it. Can't see that one. And Philip Billing, I agree with you in terms of being the player that I like, but I'm a little bit surprised by the Fellaini comparison, purely because Fellaini was quite an attacking player, wasn't he, in the final third, and I think Billing's more of a bit of an Ndidi type.
Yeah, so at Everton he was used like that. I think his career basically kind of progressed into that. But Everton actually signed him from Standard Liège as a defensive midfielder, like a sitting midfielder. And he could do that role really well. But specifically in that kind of Moyes era, Everton were almost playing like false nines before it was cool. But it certainly wasn't tactically cool. It was basically putting like a Fellaini and a Kale up front, hitting them long and knocking it down and kind of building around them. And Fellaini just proved himself to be a really good all-rounder. But the comparison, I guess, comes from the way he's got this physical presence, but he's not just kind of lump it to him. He's also got pretty good technical abilities as well, I think. And he's just a player I like. And as I said, the only thing, he's been relegated now, hasn't he? Twice. He got relegated with Huddersfield and then Bournemouth. So hopefully not that charm.
Yeah, I mean, he's still only 24 and 6'4" centre midfielder. I will say that I don't really think Liverpool need a centre mid. Maybe would make accommodations if a player like Thiago becomes available. That remains to be seen. But I think if a few smart clubs in the league probably should be looking at Philip Billing. Maybe even, don't shoot me down, Dave, maybe even Everton. Considering the lack of central midfield Everton have at the minute, Billing could be a smart little pick up there for, maybe, I don't know, 15 million or something.
Yeah, never shoot him down from here. I like him. The last game I watched them live, and actually watched them rather than just highlights or anything, was at Anfield. And if you remember that game, Bournemouth did okay. I'm pretty sure it was 2-1, was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my god, yeah. I thought he looked pretty good on the day. So yeah, I'm not. You'd need obviously to look at it to see if he'd suit the club. But I think as a player, that he could certainly play at that level. At a team looking to be, at minimum top 8.
Yeah. So just three more that I'd like to note from the rest of Europe. So I'm not sure if I mentioned them on this podcast, but a player called Marc Roca suffered relegation at La Liga, in La Liga, contracted to Espanyol. Midfielder, so unlikely to be linked with Liverpool, but left-footed, 23 years old, 6 foot, and just good on the ball, technical on the ball, and that sort of stuff. I'd expect them to move. Sandro Tonali, who Liverpool have been linked with in the past, the next Pirlo apparently, suffered relegation with Brescia in Serie A. Again, think it's nonsense, can't see it happening, but I get a nice little football, if certain clubs want to look at him, say for example like a Norwich, something like that. He seems tailored to be a Norwich player. And a few months ago I mentioned a player called Milot Rashica for Werder Bremen. Werder Bremen, incredibly lucky because they suffered relegation, but in Germany, if you finish, I think it's 16th, you have a playoff with the team who comes up in third place or something like that from Bundesliga 2. They actually drew 2-2, I think, but stayed in the league on away goals. So Rashica stays in the Bundesliga, which means that he's not available on the cheap. But if he was available on the cheap, he'd be up there with Sarr in terms of being a really suitable attacker that Liverpool could pick up on the cheap.
I watched a lot of Werder Bremen post restart. They just seem to be on every week. But I think a lot of the games were, aren't they? So I watched a lot of them and I was really impressed with them. I kind of discounted them for the reason that they did stay up. But I didn't know it was that tight. And I knew it went to the playoff and I saw that they'd stayed up. But I didn't know it was on away goals. God, that was hard. That was tough because they didn't look good last year. Because there was a few players that were getting linked with moves should they be relegated. There was another guy in the midfield. I think it's Eckstein or something like that.
Oh yeah.
He. I think two of them actually. Yeah, there is. There's two of them who play for Werder Bremen. We've got Maximilian Eckstein and then Jonas. But yeah, the Maximilian, he looks quite a good player, and I was thinking maybe he might have got a move. Didn't happen, but just you mentioned Rocco as well. I've wrote a few pieces of potential, midfielders some clubs can target, and he was one that was in there. He's a good shout as well. So yeah, there are cool names out there.
Yeah. So we seem to have time then. So if you're Liverpool at the minute, how do we navigate this window then? Because I spend a fair bit of time on Twitter, and it's looking increasingly like fans are starting to get a little bit concerned and stuff like that. Especially seeing United sign Sancho, Chelsea signed Werner and Ziyech, and linked with Havertz. So I suppose it's a tricky one, but how do Liverpool navigate a window like this? How is best to play it, I suppose?
Well, one thing I will say about the other teams is people have got to remember that it was a necessity for them to strengthen just to close the gap. Liverpool probably need to strengthen just to maybe build a little bit more and maintain what they've already done. Those teams needed to invest heavily just to get anywhere near even the conversation of the title race. But that being said, I must admit, I'm not trying to add fuel to the fire here. I think Liverpool should be buying at least one top quality player. If it's a Thiago, then so be it. Because I do think they need them. I think I'll use your term when you talk about it. The squad just needs that freshening up. Because it's a lot of the same faces now for 2 years. The core group. And I do think it's if they really want to stay where they are and start building something that's long term. I understand it's a really difficult market to recruit in. I do get it, and you have to buy players that are going to improve the side. But I do think there does need to be some sort of investment into the side this summer because it's going to be another really long, difficult campaign next year. Campaigns where you need to go to every single ground that you play at and push for 3 points. You can't just go to Old Trafford now and come away with a point and be happy. You have to go to Old Trafford, Etihad, Goodison, which has been difficult as well. You need to go to these places and win, and you're doing that week in, week out. And I just think you need some good, strong reinforcements. But it's hard, Josh, because it is a really difficult market, and it's hard when you're such a good side as well in terms of finding those right players that can actually improve.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a case of, because of the coronavirus the hit in revenue and all that sort of stuff, it seems to be a case of us waiting until we know when everything is going to be back to normal. Then we will know how much we can spend roughly. And I think the perk, I suppose, of doing that waiting, you can sort of see how the market develops, see if any unhappy players materialise. Like, say for example, Sarr, it might be a bit early for him to start, picking up a fuss basically. But if it gets close to the new season and he starts to do that, starts agitating for a move, then that presents the opportunity for Liverpool to then come in and say, listen, we can offer you an outlet here if you want it. So I think it's a bit of a positive in that regard, but the only downside is, if obviously the quality talent in Europe is getting poached now by players, by clubs in the same league as us. Man United are picking them up, Chelsea are picking them up. Arsenal aren't. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's a one.
Yeah.
I think you need to see who you can sell as well. Liverpool needs to have a look at who you can actually sell. And I think you mentioned there about things staying the same for 2 years. Not only have they stayed are they going to stay the same, but Lallana has now left. Lovren left. So, and by all accounts, we're going into the intangibles here, but by all accounts, they were big characters in the squad then. So I'd be surprised if at the end of this window, Liverpool don't have another attacker and a solution to the centre-back void that we now have because of Lovren. I wouldn't be that shocked if we went another season with Andy Robertson as the only left-back, because I think if needs must, Nico Williams can play over there. Harvey Elliott's been playing left-back and training by all accounts.
Harvey
Elliott's been playing left-back and training, yeah. Well, to be honest, it makes a degree of sense to me, because it kind of gets the defensive game instilled into him, and it puts him up against Mo Salah, who he's essentially trying to become. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that's something that's going to happen, but yeah. I'm just talking about, considering how little Robertson is injured, if that need comes up and it's maybe in the League Cup, you know what I mean? I don't think it's as much of a problem position as people stress, considering Nico Williams has played there against Brighton recently, and Robertson's never injured. I think selling Shaqiri and getting a better fourth attacker and somehow finding a way around the centre-back thing are the two stressing concerns. What I mean by finding a solution on the centre-back thing is, I don't think you have to sign a centre-back to solve that. We mentioned last week, didn't we? You can maybe occasionally drop Fabinho back, and by dropping Fabinho back, you could maybe sign another midfielder instead, as opposed to another centre-back. And then, say for example, it was a midfielder who's aged a little bit, like a Thiago. Then maybe when Thiago's finished, move Fabinho back into midfield. And by the time that happens, maybe Keanu Hoover is mature enough to step in, or Van den Berg, who I know you've been impressed by at the youth games.
Yeah, really good point.
I'm just thinking that.
Something we should probably add as
potential
well.
solutions.
Yeah, don't forget this window, although the season's shorter. The season starts a little bit quicker. The window does go into October, doesn't it? So, going back to your point at the top, there is that option to go to a player who, maybe even a player who starts really well, and you think, this player looks like they've developed a little bit over the summer. They probably have an impact straight away. You can go in after they've had a few games to get up to speed and then make offers. Which is kind of what used to be, didn't it? You used to have 3 weeks of football before the window shut, and it feels like we're going back to that this summer, which could open a few more doors in itself.
Yeah, another pair of waiting as well. I mean, this is quite a grim outlook on things, really. But it's I suppose it's the way the market goes. I think if once Liverpool realise how long it'll be before things go back to normal, you'll then also get a vibe over, the clubs who are really going to suffer from the financial hit. Like, say, for example, Norwich. Norwich aren't the richest club at all, even when they've got all the revenue streams coming in. So if they was to find out that they're waiting until, after Christmas before they get another match day ticket sold, maybe that's another little avenue you can go down in terms of saying, right, we know Norwich are going to be hit. We can offer them, I don't know, 5-10 million less for Jamal Lewis, that sort of thing. So I think there's positives and bad in your time. I think it's different to what other clubs tend to do in the transfer market, where they wait till deadline day before just going mental because they haven't really got a plan. I don't think it's that Liverpool haven't got a plan. I think it's that Liverpool are, operating in a market that has never been like this before, and they're just kind of keeping their eye out for something to exploit, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. But it's going to be an interesting few weeks. Do you just before we do wrap up, do you think it is kind of a big summer for Liverpool, or are you kind of the opinion of they probably get away with not much activity for another year?
I don't think it's specifically a big summer. I think the squad is still in a position where it can still, it's still firmly at least the second best squad in the league. So I think you're looking at the top two again, regardless. But I do think we need to add at least one new face. And I say that mostly because we've lost Lallana and Lovren. So you don't want to go into the new season weaker. And I know that Curtis Jones is coming through and Nico Williams is coming through, and that's great. But I do think Liverpool would benefit this summer. I know we did, last summer we got away with it and all that sort of stuff. But we just experienced our first proper go at it, and we got 97 points, I think, this season. Second proper go at it, we won it, and we got 99 points, I think. So yeah, I think looking ahead to the next season, I'd just like Liverpool to at least add one new face, and I don't mean a new face as in Adrian, a back or something like that. I mean a proper tool for Klopp to use, a proper player who's going to actually make a difference to what Klopp has at disposal. But we I suppose we will see. So before we round off, just one little plug again towards Analysing Anfield newsletter. It will be sent out tomorrow. Sign up beforehand if you want to see the newsletter. This week it's going to be just a little note on a set piece thing that we did. That I'm sure people would like to see that we can't actually show on this type of podcast. Dave, what are you writing about this week with the?
Yeah, so it's a look ahead to the Champions League.
Oh yeah,
mainly with a recap of what happened in the first leg. It was nearly 6 months ago now, which is bizarre. But I've been watching the games back at home. I'm writing about them. Some really interesting games so far. We've had a look at Napoli, Barcelona. Then later today, hopefully the podcast will be out. Before the newsletter, we're looking at Lyon Juventus, which again was tactically quite interesting. And then we'll have a look at the other games and round off the week, and then it'll be something completely new next week. So by all means, if anyone's got any ideas, drop me or yourself, Josh, a message, and we'll have a look at a new topic over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, something